What's going on, guys? This is Empty Box, and today I want to talk about iRacing a little bit. You know, maybe some things about the safety rating system, some things about licenses, disqualification systems, that sort of thing. Topical commentary right there. Wonder why. And again, for the record, I've been saying this for years and years and years on the forums. None of this is a new opinion at all. That race at Bristol has nothing to do with that, other than it's about time I say something outside of the forums. And there's actually kind of a couple of different things I want to hit on here, because it's not just the disqualification system. There's also another thing that I frequently see, because again, I'm in this position where I'm interacting with people who aren't necessarily huge iRacing fans and believe in the way things work at iRacing, or alternatively, prospective iRacing users, and I see a lot of the same questions, a lot of the same concerns, a lot of the same comments time and time again, and nothing has been done to address any of it. So first of all, the safety rating system, that's what separates iRacing from the lawless Wild West of public server online racing. Basically, if you do bad things, you'll get incident points, and you have to have a certain number of corners per incident, which is how the license level is determined, which means which cars you're eligible to be able to drive in official series. For example, in road course racing, driving more than half of your car outside of the predetermined racing surface will give you a 1x. That'll give you 1 incident point. If you smash into another car, in asphalt racing, either oval or road course racing, that's going to be a 4x. Light contact brushing with another car is a 0x, but then you can also accumulate further incident points depending on what happens. For example, if you give someone a 0x and then they run wide in the corner, get an off track, you'll also get an off track 1x incident point, because you very well could have been at fault. Now, one of the things I often hear from prospective users, or alternatively people who maybe don't necessarily think through how the system works, is they often say it's absolute bullcrap that they get incident points for something that they may well had absolutely nothing to do. And here's where I say, no, that's perfectly fine. That is not the problem. That means absolutely nothing, because that's how it works in racing. Someone smashes into your car, they don't pay the crash damage. You don't get out and exchange insurance information like a regular car accident on the street or anything like that. That's not how it works. As well as the fact that in the end, what really actually matters is not the incident points, and it never should be the incident points. The thing that should matter, the thing that does matter, is the fact that your car got smashed into, or you smashed into another car, and therefore you have damage. Or alternatively, speaking of the off-track things, which is one of the most contentious points within the safety rating system in iRacing, it shouldn't be the fact that you get a 1x incident point for running wide. It should be the fact that running wide is probably slower unless you did it intentionally, as well as the fact that, in theory, and this should be very well possible given that they have the systems in place that should enable this to happen, should be the fact that there's less grip offline way out there in the boonies, and that's going to slow you down even further than the fact that you're going 20 miles off track. This is why I personally am of the belief that the safety rating system doesn't really matter. Now, that seems entirely contradictory, but for someone like myself, for someone like a lot of you guys out there who go into a race, wanting to race properly, not smashing into other cars, take it seriously and have a good time, you're not going to need to worry about it for the most part, because you're not doing the things that are a problem in the first place, which is how it should be. The safety rating system is actually this sort of Jedi mind trick thing, where it tricks people into caring even though that's not what they're actually supposed to care about. And in my opinion, one of the greatest things about the system is the fact that we do get people complaining about the incidents from other people when they're not seeing what's actually happening in front of them, such as the fact that their car is now a smoldering wreck. They see that little green text at the top pop up, and they're like, oh no, I got a 4X. No, your car's wrecked. That's the real problem, dude. It's a mind game. That's mind game. And that's why I say the safety rating system does not matter, but that's why we need the safety rating system, and that's why I like it as it is. Now, there are issues. For one, the system obviously cannot determine fault. And this is, again, perfectly acceptable. You look at real-world racing all the time. You'll see racing incidents. Whose fault is it? Half the people will say it's this guy's, half the people will say it's that guy's, and in the end, it's just well, it was an incident, it happened, it was a racing incident, that's racing, that's just how it goes, and that's it. You can't even determine faults. Looking back at it as a human in slow motion, seeing all the replay angles 20 times over in slow motion and all that stuff, why would we be able to think that an automated system would be able to somehow create judgment? It can't. But at the same time, we have to understand that that is going to be the case. You're going to get incident points from other people and wrecks and incidents that you really had nothing to do with, and that's more or less that. This is the root problem of an automated disqualification system built upon a blind, no-fault incident system. It doesn't know what happened, it can't determine what happened, and that's the way it needs to work, and that's the way it does work, but yet we've made it the judge, jury, and executioner just because, well, you got a bunch of incident points, so you had to be doing something wrong. Now, the reason why we have this system is somewhat, I don't know. I honestly do not know why we have this system or why they added it. I can only put two and two together. In late 2013 October, there was a video posted that you can find in the description where a guy in an HPD went absolutely nuts off the deep end and decided to wreck everybody in the race. Obviously, the protest system should take care of this. That guy should have been permabanned for good because that is what's supposed to happen. That's how it's supposed to work. Then shortly around that same time, we hear iRacing come out with the system like, hey, we're considering an automated disqualification system based on the incident system. So, yeah, let us know what you think. The two were way too close together. Officially, I guarantee you they will never say that. However, if you read between the lines, it's way too convenient in my opinion. What they've come out and said since then is actually somewhat contradictory to that, where they've said that, oh, it's not designed to take care of that one guy who just goes off the deep end in the race, but rather it's supposed to get people to think about the way that they're driving and consider their actions, which, again, we already have that. It's called the license system. Again, we already have that. It's called damage. It is a solution looking for a problem built upon a system that is not designed to do the task that they want it to do. It makes no sense, and it never will make sense. Now I want to talk about some of the actual solutions, the things that they could do to improve the quality of racing, because quite frankly, they do need to work on improving the quality of the racing. Because in my opinion, the one thing that makes iRacing totally unique in the world of racing sims is the fact that it is the quality of competition. When that's your best feature, it's important to make sure that you take care of your best feature and ensure that it doesn't become a laughingstock. When you see the same people time and time again failing to complete 10 simple laps around a track without smashing into things with alarming repeatability, you have to wonder whether or not the system is actually properly working. This is where the license system comes into play, because you do take such a large amount of corners, a lot of races, and all that any one specific moment doesn't screw you over entirely. It doesn't really matter as much. And that's fantastic. But at the same time, we've put ourselves in a situation where you see the same people time and time again having the same incidents, racing the same way, smashing into the same walls, doing the same stuff time and time again, but yet nothing is done about it. Now, I can understand you want to have people in the races. That's obviously good. We need people in the races. We need people participating. iRacing needs people participating because obviously the revenue stream and they're a business and all that. Hey, we get it. But at the same time, if you get to a point where the competition is no longer what it really should be, then the primary feature of iRacing, the thing that really separates it from every other racing sim out there, begins to tarnish a bit, and it regresses to the competition. What I personally would propose would be to increase the number of corners taken for your eventual safety rating calculation into the corners per incident, that determines your safety rating and therefore down the road the license system. But at the same time, make those standards more strict, make them more stringent. That way it actually means something, because right now, anyone can maintain an A-class license whether or not they're actually capable of racing at an A-class level. This is also probably why we've seen a lot of drivers, a lot of very good drivers, who will no longer race in the official regular iRacing series because the driving standards have regressed to a point where they no longer feel that it's worth their time, and they've gone to leagues, they've gone to hosted racing, or they've gone elsewhere. That's taking people out of the races, that's decreasing participation, and that's not a good thing. If it were up to me, I would start by making the corner per incident requirement, which is basically your safety rating, at a B class license level, equivalent to what is currently at the Pro Series requirement. I think that this would be a level that most drivers would be able to attain without too terribly much adjustment. They'd be able to maintain it without too terribly much adjustment. But at the same time, to get to that A-class license level, they would have to make adjustments and start to focus on their driving and being more conscious. I also think that there is a potential to make the license levels at the lower end a little bit more spread out. So it's a bigger jump from the D class to the C class to the, and then, comparatively from the C class to the B class is a little bit smaller jump. And then when you go from B to A, it's even a little bit smaller there, because ideally the license level, the license system, in my opinion, should be about ingraining good habits in drivers at the lower ends of the spectrum, so that way by the time that they get to the higher ends of the spectrum, they don't need to be babysat, and everything just more or less works, because that's how they've been brought up in the system, if that makes any sense. But where we are now, with everybody getting an A-class license and with it being totally trivial, they never develop those good habits, and plus they don't spend enough time in the lower license levels getting relatively usable experience for newer sim racers, that they're going into the top end of the spectrum unprepared over their heads, and that's not where they should be at all. The whole thing just doesn't work. It's a system that should work. It's a system that's key to iRacing's success and its platform, but at the same time, it hasn't been maintained with as iRacing is now in 2018. It's still built upon 2007, 2008, 2009 requirements, when iRacing was much smaller and the only people that heard about it were in sim racing already, as opposed to something that is more accessible, something that is more known about, and hopefully is bringing in more drivers who aren't just already sim racers in the community and are already capable and competent. Does that make any sense? Hopefully it makes sense. Hopefully. I don't know how well I explain myself, but seriously, iRacing, you have the systems, you already have the tools, you just need to use your tools, use what you have, and don't be afraid to make changes. These things aren't set in stone. You can make improvements. There's a couple of other things I also want to just touch on just for a moment, in case anyone from iRacing actually happens to be listening. First of all, the protest system is again something I would like to see overhauled and improved. As I understand it now, currently there are really only two end results, and that is someone either gets banned or alternatively an incident has been noted on their record, which is all fine and dandy, but I think there just needs to be more granularity and more actual punishment for some of these incidents. I've seen numerous people who get into these incidents where it's clearly not something that's necessarily intentional, but at the same time, it's something that they shouldn't be doing, and you see it time and time again. There has to be a punishment, otherwise the system ends up losing all of its teeth, and it becomes a situation where a lot of us are sitting here saying that the protest system in iRacing really doesn't work for anything other than just absolutely, totally, stupidly egregious intentional wrecking. If there's a lot of people that really doubt whether or not the system works, it's probably a good opportunity to reevaluate and consider, why are they saying that? Because I'm not alone in saying that the protest system really kind of feels like it needs a little bit of work. Another thing relating to the license level and the license system, what about the idea of something like a yearly stats reset? Or maybe you just kind of regrade things, so that way the drivers on the high end currently are still on the high end, and drivers at the low end are still on the low end, but you sort of rebalance it a little bit. This is something that you commonly see done in other competitive games from time to time, where they kind of re-level the playing field, just to sort of get things going. And especially when you have a system like iRacing has that's been going on for 10 years, maybe that is something that would be useful to consider going on at this time. You could also add in the idea of something like a yearly minimum participation requirement, where, if you don't play for a while, your license does go downhill. It does, decline into a lower class series. So that way, if you do decide to resubscribe and go back to racing, you're not just going back into there where you were previously, and you do have to kind of work back into it, so that way you get a little bit of that experience going again. Maybe something like that. I don't know. And last, wrapping things up here, Hopefully someone from iRacing sees this. Hopefully. I know you guys watch my videos from time to time. Maybe you guys see this one, hopefully. But if you do, there's one thing I'd like to say. There's issues. There's things that need to be solved. You know, you guys have had a game where you've been out for a decade plus. You know, a lot of us have been around for nearly as long. You know, there's a reason why there's a lot of people that have that gold badge on the forums. It's because we enjoy iRacing. It's because we like the product, even though sometimes we'll have our disagreements and we'll go different ways, or life circumstances and all that. There's a reason why a lot of us end up coming back. You know, I think that speaks to the product itself. But because of that, that also means that there are a lot of people who see things and not necessarily the great things. You know, early on, in my experience, back when I became a member back in like 2009, you know, that was shortly before Fast Track. Then he came up with, you know, you changed the season, or you changed the series scheduling, getting rid of the, you know, Monday, Wednesday, Friday thing that you had going on, instead making every series 2 hours, every other hour, except for the very popular series. You know, like there was more of a will and, you know, press to change things to try and make the whole iRacing ecosystem better. Whereas I feel like recently there's just been nothing in that regard. For example, one of the things I'll absolutely harp on, the season participation. You know, the first couple of weeks within a new season, lots of participation, everybody's excited, everybody's jacked up, but come week 9, week 12, unless you're driving C-Fixed or the Skippies, you know, you're looking for a strength of field race. And, you know, way back when you guys came up with the participation credits program to try and address that issue, but clearly that hasn't had the intended, you know, results, and it's something that needs to be addressed still. Maybe in that case it's something where you drop the participation credits program, but instead you sort of change the subscription fee around a little bit, or the price of the content, to basically have no effect on your bottom line, but make it a more streamlined and easier to understand process for those of, you know, the people that aren't super in detail figuring out how to do iRacing most efficiently for them, you know? Like, maybe that's something. You know, the GT3 balance of performance. Yeah, I will say it has seemed like you guys did a better job earlier on, you know, this year of being willing to make changes, but why was it ever a thing where balance of performance changes, you know, basically had to wait nearly a full season? Like, that isn't making the season better. It isn't making the series better. Like, no one's actually benefiting if one car is left tremendously overpowered for a very long time. Like, you shouldn't allow these things to become memes and easy targets for your competition, as well as the people who don't like iRacing. You're feeding your haters, and that's just not a good thing. Yeah, it's not that I know anything about that, but yeah, that's that. Got a lot out here. But yeah, I've ranted, I've raved. Hope you guys enjoyed. Bye.